Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Live with Kevin, eventually another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. You see it up over there on my shoulder. So glad that you're here. If you're with us live, and I know that many of you aren't watching this live, you're watching it later, but if you're with us live, I'd like you to say hello and tell us where you're from using the comments of whatever social media platform you're in. That'd be awesome. And if you do that, not only will I be appreciative, but it'll also get you used to participating in this conversation, because it'll be a better conversation if you do in fact participate. And here's what I mean. If you were joining my guest Kelly and I around a table, and the three of us were having a conversation, you wouldn't just passively listen. If you had a question, you'd ask it. If you had a comment, you'd share it. If you had an idea, you would offer it, right? So why not do that here? Because if you do that, you'll get more value from this conversation, and you'll make it a better conversation for everyone else that follows. So you win, we win, everybody else wins. Like, that's a pretty good thing all the way around, right? So it is, as I said, going to be on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast later. So what I'm going to do now that I've welcomed those of you that are live on the video, what I'm going to do, and again, if you're just joining us, you can say hello and tell us where you're from. We'll love to see those. But what I'm going to do now is the countdown for what we'll be trimming all this above for the actual podcast. So Marissa, this is for you in 3, 2, 1. Newsflash, all humans are not the same. And in the workplace today, we are more different, at least in some ways, than we've ever been. And yet we must learn to communicate with each other and work with people who are different than we are. That's the facts of life, and that's the focus of our conversation today, working with and leading people who aren't like us. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger positive difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to us, you could be with us in the future live, because we do these live, not just me and my guest live, but with other people live streaming. So in the future, you could join us for a live stream and get this information sooner, because like the time between when this is being recorded right now and it's going to go out into the world is 3 months. So you can get like a 3-month competitive advantage in the future. And the way to find out about how to do that is to join our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just go to, which are just two of the platforms where we happen to do these. remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook, remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn to get all that information. And so you can join us, get in front of things, and really get the inside scoop of what's going on with the show as well. Today's episode is brought to you by my newest book, Flexible Leadership: Navigate Uncertainty and Lead with Confidence. It's time to realize that styles can get in our way, and that following our strengths alone might not always be the best approach. In a world more complex and uncertain than ever, leaders need a new perspective and a new set of tools to create great results for their organizations and team members. That's what Flexible Leadership provides you. Learn more and order your copy at remarkablepodcast.com/flexible. That's remarkablepodcast.com/flexible. And on that note, I'm going to bring in our guest. There she is. The lovely and talented Kelly McDonald is our guest. She is an acclaimed speaker who specializes in consumer trends and changing demographics. She's the president of McDonald Marketing and has authored 4 best-selling books on the customer experience, leadership, and marketing, all of which come from the standpoint of working with people who are, quote, not like you. Her book that we're going to talk about today, How to Work With and Lead People Not Like You, has been on not 1, but 2 bestseller lists. Kelly, thank you for joining us. Such a pleasure to have you here. And are you ready to dive in?
I am. Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, so let's do that. Let's see. I think we've got some comments here. Let me see. Oh, we got someone. Oh, hello, Christina, coming into us from Texas today. That's awesome. I always love it especially when it's someone that I actually know who they are. That's even cooler. So Kelly, let's start here. For those of you that are only watching this, you don't know that there's a cello over her shoulder. That might come into play at some point. I don't know. I already know that there's at least one way that Kelly and I are not alike. She plays the cello and I don't. Well, okay.
You're being very generous, Kevin.
You play it better than I do. I can guarantee you that. So let's just start here. So when you were 7 years old, well, this is somewhat metaphorical, right? When you were 7 years old, you did not realize that you would own a marketing company, write books, and do speaking. So like, how do you kind of get here? Tell us just a little bit about the journey that leads you to this work.
Okay. I'll try to do this as quickly as possible. So I am a marketing person by training, studied marketing in college, got my degree, and went to work for large global ad agencies out of school. So, working on clients like Toyota, Nissan, Budweiser, Kimberly-Clark, you get the picture, Nike, big brands. And that was excellent training for what I do now, because when you've only got, let's say, a 50-minute meeting, 55-minute meeting with the VP of marketing of one of these large companies, Kevin, you've got to be able to go in there and say, here's your problem. Like there's always a marketing problem to solve, right? Here's your truck problem, Nissan, and here's what your competition is doing. And here's what the consumer wants. And here's the remedy for that. And here's what that looks like in a marketing campaign. All of this condensed into like an hour, maybe an hour and a half. So it was really good training for 25 years of doing that. And at the same time, hello from Texas person, I lived in Dallas, Texas during this time. And so I lived in Dallas, Texas for 26 years. And during the same time that all this, that this was happening in my career, I was also seeing the changing demographics around us in Texas. There was a huge growth in the Hispanic population between 1990 and 2000, huge growth. And I could hear it and see it. I could hear more Spanish being spoken with my ears, and I could see more Hispanic people, at Target and the grocery store with my eyes. And so I knew that all we needed was the 2000 census to tell us how big what I called the size of the prize was, right? Like this is going to be a new market opportunity for a lot of different brands. And all we need are the numbers to be able to actually like evaluate it.
Prove it. Yep.
So the 2000 census comes out and it exploded. I mean, this was literally like news headlines everywhere that the Hispanic population was then 16% of the population. It had grown exponentially, and certainly in places like Texas and stuff. So what happened is we started getting calls at the ad agency that I was currently working at, which specialized in Hispanic marketing. And I was one of the only non-Hispanics there. And we started getting calls from brands who literally were calling and saying, General Mills going, do we need to make dulce de leche Cheerios? Like, what is the opportunity here? What are the kind of products and services that we need? Levi Strauss is calling and saying, do men from Mexico prefer Wranglers or Levi's, and like what kind of styles and stuff? So everybody wanted a piece of this big consumer group that just kind of burst onto the scene. And so we started doing that. And then at one point I ended up leaving that company and starting my own, speaking industry, because what I realized was nobody knew anything about this. And there are lots of conferences where marketing is discussed and people are trying to figure out how to expand their business. Well, I had the magic elixir, which is I've got one audience for you that you probably haven't tapped into, and you can, and I'll show you how. So that started exploding. Everybody wanted to understand, do we just translate ads into English? No, not really, because then there's no real consumer insight and, all kinds of like nuances that make marketing really effective. So then that led to several of my clients saying, well, you came and you spoke at our marketing conference about, the Hispanic size of the prize, but what about other market segments? Like we value all market segments, whether it's millennials, whether it's Blacks, whether it's women, whether it's, you name it. Can you do something on that? And of course, Kevin, when you're self-employed and someone asks you a question, the answer
is yes.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I can do that, especially if I've got 6 months to figure it out. So I started diving into all different kinds of, segmented marketing segmentation, and creating tips and tricks for people on how to work with people not like them. And then ultimately I got a call from Wiley, the largest publisher of business books in the world. And they had come across a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not kidding. They had come across a PowerPoint presentation that I had written called How to Market and Sell to People Not Like You. And they called and they said, tell me about that. So I'm telling them about like what's in that presentation. And they said, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I was like, no, I don't have time. I'm working, And my editor, the greatest guy ever, said, I think you have a book here and we want you to write a book. So I got my first book deal from Wiley. That's like going to the pinnacle, and it became a bestseller. And when you have a bestseller, then they want another one, Mission Impossible 2 breeds Mission Impossible 3, etc.
There are 8 of those. So you got a ways to go, Kelly. so it leads us to this book, How to Work with and Lead People Not Like You. And I want to get to the book, but I want to make an observation. So for everyone listening, everyone who's on the show is pitching to get on the show. We get pitches all the time. We get email pitches, we get letter pitches, we get books unsolicited.
Please,
we get all sorts of stuff. It happens all the time, and which is fine. I say that says we're doing something right, that people want to be on the show. But here's the point: most of those are books that most of them haven't come out yet, or have just come out. This book came out in 2017. It
was my third book. Yeah.
And so I think that...
Why are we talking about it?
well, I know why we're talking about it, right? Because it's still important. I just think the point that I want to make here is there's some things that in here that, I read something to one of my teammates today from the book. And I said, when do you think that was written? They said, well, like this year. I'm like, no, 7 years ago. Right. So my point is that for all of you that are listening and are going to get a copy of Kelly's book, How to Work with and Lead People Not Like You, it's going to be absolutely as real and relevant as it was then, because the issues haven't changed, maybe even more so, to your point.
So, yeah.
And so I think that's really a useful thing. And the thing that I thought was so prescient specifically was, you tell a story early in the book about you were given this talk that had what I'll call the D word in it, diversity. And you were getting all sorts of people wanting you to do that talk. And then it sort of went like this. And so I really want you to talk about that word and why the diversity word
is off-putting,
is getting in our way. And for many of us, it's getting in the way. So just talk about that.
I love that. I'm going to borrow that, getting in our way. I'm stealing that from you from right now to forevermore. So what I found was, again, this is a while ago, right? So I'm talking about diversity, and nobody was talking about diversity in any way, shape, or form back then. And so I'm doing this. It's a fresh topic, and people from a business standpoint, you're always going to get the customers that you're getting. So how do you get the ones that you're not getting, but you could be? It's about expanding your marketing and expanding your customer experiences and all those kinds of things that make complete sense. And then, of course, you're working with people not like you. So I did see audiences squirming when I would say diversity. And what I observed is it either had one of two things, or both, Kevin. One was either people thought about it very, very narrowly, like what I call the big five: race, ethnicity, age, or generational differences. This is when everybody was still talking about millennials, and boomers, and
they still are, by the way. But
yes, but millennials were entering the workforce then, and now they're like,
30% of the workforce.
Yeah, exactly. So it was either about race, ethnicity, generational differences, gender, or sexual identification. Okay, that was the big five. So that was the only place that people went to in their head when they thought about diversity. It was like one of those. And my definition of diversity was always broader than that. My definition was, well, what if you're just different from me? What if I live in the city and you live in the suburbs? What if a woman has kids and I don't, which I don't? That makes us really different. We could have the same color skin and be the same age and live in the same zip code and make the same household income. But if she's got kids and I don't, we're really going to be different. The whole way we're wired and how we make decisions and what our priorities are. So I found that diversity was either too narrow, or frankly, it just made people squirm. Like, oh my gosh, we're going to talk about,
Well, it's an HR topic. It becomes an HR topic, right?
Right. And HR, I got to give props to all the HR professionals out there, because the HR professionals actually saw what I call the size of the prize with diversity a decade before anybody else. And they were the ones internally at the organizations that they worked with that were saying, we need to diversify our talent pool. Like we can do better, right? Like let's broaden the talent pool. They saw the wisdom in that. And then what happened was something that I think looking back is kind of unfortunate is then diversity training entered the workforce because all of a sudden people are actually working with all different kinds of people because they've done a good job of diversifying the talent pool. So that's a good thing. But then people didn't know how to work together. And so they're like walking on eggshells, or they're saying the wrong thing, or it comes out the wrong way. And so this diversity training comes in, which again, this is a long time ago. It came across as, people were talking about unconscious bias, and it came across to the audiences feeling, I'm not saying it was like this, but feeling like shame and blame. All right. And people then started to resist that. I mean, if you're going to make me feel bad about what I do at work here, or make me uncomfortable about, talking to you, then I'm just going to shut down. I'm just going to not say anything. I'm going to lay low. And people started feeling very resistant toward the D word. So I dropped it, because number one, it wasn't.
You used a new D word. You used demographics, is what you did.
I used demographics. Absolutely.
So I want to talk. I want to dive into that. I think there are lots of folks who, and some of that was, I mean, in that training, whether it was meant or not, I think usually it wasn't, but people were feeling like, well, I should be able to do this. I shouldn't have trouble or be uncomfortable with my colleagues and teammates. But one of the things I love about this book is that you are very practical and tactical about a variety of situations. We of course won't get to all of them, but what I want to do is have you talk about, and you didn't say it this way in the book exactly, but maybe I'll give you your second thing from Kevin. Like, how do you help people get past should? Well, I really should be better at this and working with those who aren't like me. In the book, you give us a number of like really good, what's in it for me reasons why I ought to do this. And so often in that training, it was like, you sort of have to, because it's our new policy.
Right.
And like how, like help people, because people listening may need this, but I think what you're going to say will not only be helpful for them, it'll be helpful for them as leaders in helping their folks. Like, what's really in it for us as individuals to work and lead people that aren't like us? Like what's in it for us?
What's in it for us? Okay. Well, what's in it for us is greater personal success and better understanding of another person's perspective, right? So I don't care if you've ever had coffee with a friend and you're talking about something and they have a different perspective, and it's one that you've never considered because it never actually entered your mind. I mean, we can't think about things that we aren't thinking about, And so I know for me, I've had situations where people I've had an opinion about something, or I have a thought, or, sort of a way of thinking about somebody, and somebody presents me with an alternative perspective. And it's not that they're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and they're right. It's just different. It's just different. Have you thought about it this way? Or let me give you, a story or something and give me some context to a different way of thinking about it. And it's eye-opening. And in some cases, Kevin, it's actually kind of mind-blowing. Like you might have a conversation with somebody and you're like, I never thought of that. I never thought about it that way.
Never crossed my mind.
It never crossed my mind. And here's why it never crossed my mind, is because we only default to the things that we know, right? The things that we read, the people who are in our circle, and the conversations that we have and the work that we do. That's what we know. It takes something from the outside to bring a new perspective to the table. And again, it's not about that perspective being right or wrong or good or bad. It's just different. And I mean, one way I can tell you that everybody can relate to is if you are not a tech person and you know somebody who is, have you ever just sat down and talked to somebody who's in tech? Their analytical mind operates very differently than mine does. They start looking for what makes sense, what's feasible, how do we execute? I mean, they're going down a track that I simply don't have in my brain because I'm more conceptual than that, or I'm more social than that. I mean, I'll think about, well, I don't know, we might not be able to get approval on this or something. And they'll be like, it doesn't matter. This is what we have to do. And so it's just, I mean, that's why study after study after study after study, there's never been one, Kevin, that disproves this. Every study that's ever examined the productivity and performance of diverse teams versus non-diverse teams, the diverse teams do better on every metric that business success is measured: sales, profit, customer retention, customer satisfaction, employee engagement. I mean, you name any metric that we could go, this is great in business, and diverse teams outperform it. And so what's happening now too with companies and brands is everybody has technology. Everybody has roughly very competitive pricing with their competitors. Everybody has good products. So the only thing that really differentiates a company from their competitors is the people and the culture. That's the magic elixir. And that's actually one of the best things and easiest things that brands can do. And that's why this is getting so much attention. Now, the D word has fallen out of favor, as you know. I still don't like to use it because I think people think too narrowly about it, but it also got tagged with woke, over the last few years. I don't think there's anything woke about it. I mean, again, any study will show you that diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams. And that doesn't have to be race and ethnicity. It can literally be, wow, we have, we have a marketing team over here. We have a tech team over here. We have young people. We have older executives. Yep. Everybody benefits from that.
There's a study that you talk about, and this is not a book report. So, and I know that I have read the book since you have. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
But you talk about a study, and we don't have to go into the details of it, but it's about murder mysteries, solving murder mysteries.
Oh, yeah.
With sorority or fraternity folks. And here's the point I want to make. Like they do the study. The study is done, and they have people from the same fraternity or the same sorority together.
Likeness.
And then they add another person. And in some cases, the person they add is also from their fraternity or sorority. And sometimes it's someone who's not. And
right.
Here's the point that you've already made, the first point, which is, yes, those teams did better. But the other interesting point, and it's where I want to go next, is, but everyone on those teams said they didn't like it as much. They didn't enjoy the experience.
They hated it.
Okay, I was being nice. But they got better results. So I think that's worth thinking. So here's my next question. We want to work. I mean, I think 95% of people, 95% of the time, want to work better with people that they work with, even if they don't understand them, and even if they're different and all that stuff. Most of us, most of the time. And yet, if we're all honest, there's times when we say, but do I have to like them?
Oh, no, you don't. You don't.
Say a little bit more about that.
Can I go very quickly, Kevin? Can I just go back to that study for a second? Because I think that a key point is, I mean, you hit the broad ones, which is the teams that had the diverse team with an outsider, meaning somebody from a different fraternity or sorority, solve the murder mystery better, faster, and more accurately, like a ridiculously significant,
like twice as well or something like that.
More than doubling their chances of getting the right answer. And yet the teams that won reported that they couldn't believe they won because all they did was bicker. It was so stressful. They actually felt like they were doing it wrong. There was, like friction and all this kind of stuff. They were like, oh my gosh, it was so awful. And my point to your listeners and viewers is the takeaway on that is working with people who are not like you feels harder because it is harder. Like you're not doing it wrong. It's part of the process, but it every time will lead to a better outcome. And so I think that's really validating for people who have worked with people who are not like them. And they're like, man, this was brutal. Like, why is Kevin so hard to work with? Why is it so hard?
We hear that all the time. I hear that.
So that's a natural byproduct of a different perspective, is that sometimes you are just going to have that, like, I don't get this. And yet what you don't realize in those moments is you are actually getting there. So what I tell audiences is don't give up when you're starting to feel that friction or that stress in a meeting or a process with people. You're actually getting somewhere. That's not the time to bail. That's the time to lean in, and I just think that's an important takeaway for people because they think they're doing it wrong and they're not. That's the process. Yeah.
like I said, there's lots of things and lots of very sort of tactical, practical ways to help people with a variety of situations. And one of the points that you make that I just like you to just go into a little bit more. This is sort of profoundly true. And you say that one of the things that we can do is to focus on the person and not the difference. Because very often as humans, we're great at recognizing patterns. We see the thing that's different, and that's where our brain goes, and we have a hard time leaving there. And so give us like two specific ways that we can, in fact, focus on the person and not the difference.
Right. So we tend to see what I call the envelope, right? If you're older than me, then I see that. If you're younger than me, I see that. If I'm white and you're Asian or Hispanic or Black, I see that. We see the envelope, and sometimes that envelope is just an actual barrier right then and there in our brains. And so if we could just sort of set that aside, and I'm working with you and I say, Kevin, you're sharing something with me, and here's a way. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that is going to get the other person to start sharing more about how they know this, what their experience was, how did they come up with that idea, how did they formulate the opinions that they have. And it's not confrontational in any way. I mean, it's actually a very respectful thing. Tell me more about that. Especially actually if I don't share your view or I don't understand your view, tell me more about that. Instead of shutting it down and saying, well, I don't see it that way, Kevin. Tell me more about that. And
if we go back to where we started in this whole conversation, is that one of the values, or maybe the single greatest value that having diversity brings us, is different perspectives or ways to see the world. Yes. That the tell me more about it question is inviting that different perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really powerful way. Another thing that you say in the book, it's a powerful 4-word phrase. And I thought about just saying, tell us the 4-word phrase, but I didn't think that was fair. So the thing that you say is, use this question, and I'm going to sneeze, everybody. I need your help.
Oh, yes.
Why is this such a powerful thing?
It's a very powerful phrase because it's not that yes or no question of, can you help me? So can you help me is a yes or no question. And I can ask you, Kevin, can you help me? And you might say, well, I'd love to, Kelly, but I got to get these numbers to Joanne by 3:00. And, if she doesn't get the numbers on time, it's a yes or a no. And you can really get a no, a legit no. Also, when you ask a question like, can you help me? People are a little reluctant to commit because they don't even know what is going to be asked of them, right? So it's kind of like the person who calls you up back when you were in college or something and said, hey, what are you doing on Saturday, Kevin? And you were like, nothing, no plans. What do you have in mind? And I'm like, want to help me move? Trapped, right?
Right. So here's one of the things I thought of when I was reading that section about how I need your help. Like that's a valuable phrase in every such situation. But let's think about it as a leader. If I ask you and you work for me, I say, I need your help. It's that's a very different statement than, can you help me? Because first of all, now, can you help me? You're going to say yes, even if you don't want to. Now you feel potentially put upon, you feel micromanaged, you feel all sorts of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I could think I'm asking the same question, and at some high level I am, and yet it's a totally different.
I need your help actually honors the person that you're talking to, right? So if I say to you, or if I say, to somebody else, I need your help, what I'm conveying to you is you have something I lack, okay? You either have experience, you have knowledge, you have contacts, you have information, whatever it is. And so when I say I need your help, I'm honoring that person. And then what happens is it's not a yes or a no question. So if I say I need your help, you're going to say something like, what do you need? How can I help? Or even something broader like, what's going on, Kelly? And those are legitimate things because people want to know, okay, what are you asking me? And then if I say, well, I'm on this, Johnson project, and I'm kind of stuck on this because I don't think I have the right data. And someone said that you could help me with this. And even if that person is not the one who can help, at that point, they're an investor, right? So they'll be like, you know what? I don't have that information anymore, but Shelly does. Let me actually just get her on the phone. And, people like to be asked to help. And here's the other thing too. Your audience needs to know that as Homo sapiens, we are wired to help our fellow mankind. We are. That's how we've survived all these years, is that
cynics beware. This is actually true.
It's actually true. Primitive people lived together in safe communities because they had complementary skills, right? So somebody built the cave or, made the cave livable or something, and somebody else went and hunted, and somebody else, whatever, changed babies, or whatever. But the point is, we're wired to help, and we like to help, right? So if I say to you, I need your help, and you go, sure, what's going on? And then I tell you, you're happy to help, and it feels good because that's what we're designed to do, is help each other. So stop saying, can you help me? Because it's a dead end, and people are very reluctant to answer that question, especially when they don't know what's going to be asked of them.
Yeah.
But I need your help opens doors.
So I'm watching our time, and I want to, this is a hard subject. Like we said it, like one of the reasons, like this is hard, and we've sort of taken the high road, and we've talked about, and we've given people a lot of practical things, which is what I want to always do here. But I want to tackle one other thing, and we have limited time, so we can't do everything, because ultimately, everybody, you need to go get a copy of Kelly's book, How to Work With and Lead People Not Like You. But I think as leaders, we need to talk about one of the elephants in the room. And that is, what if you have, now this could be us, but I'm really, in this case, I'm asking this about others. You've got folks on your team and you believe, or you're observing prejudice. Give us a couple of quick things. Like, I'm the leader. I see some stuff on my team. My observation is it's prejudice. It may not be, but let's assume that we've figured out, or we believe that's what it is. What's your advice to us as a leader to help with that on our team?
I guess I would have one more diagnostic question here, which is it overt prejudice? Like, is it actually denying people opportunities and things like that? Or is it unintentional prejudice, where it's not overt, it's just something that's happening and nobody's actually aware of it?
Okay. So talk about each just for a minute.
Okay. So overt prejudice, where someone's being passed over for a promotion, something like that, or not giving a fair shot. The best thing that a leader can do is to create advocates within their teams and say, look, we're always, those of us in, let's say, leadership positions, managerial positions, we always, as part of any organization, part of our job is to build the bench, right? Build the bench, just like a football team. Who's going to actually go in and get, and get some playing time? And how do we bring those people and sharpen their skills? Well, it's not necessarily going to just happen. And so the best leaders are the ones who actually open the doors for that. It can be with mentoring, and it can also be with celebrating that person. So one quick story, a friend of mine was, she's a Black woman, and went earlier in her career, she had a great boss. And her boss called her into her office one day and said, Denise is going to be retiring in 6 months. It hasn't been announced yet, but I heard today that it's, she's going to be leaving in 6 months and retiring. Do you want her job? And my friend said, yes. And she said, okay, so we've got 6 months to get you ready. So what's going to need to happen is I'm going to get you on some committees, and I'm going to introduce you to some people who are going to be making the decisions on this, but you need to get some relevant experience. So you're going to have to work on these committees. In other words, she wasn't doing the work. She's saying, I'm going to help you get on some committees. I'm going to make people aware of you. Then you're going to have to get on those committees and do the work. And committees are always extra work, beside your regular job. But the point is, she opened that door to her and had 6 months to prep her, so that when the time came where that position was being discussed and she said, what about Joy Pierce? No one in the room was going, who's that?
Right.
And everyone was going, oh my gosh, yes, she's been on that committee. They've been doing amazing things. I know her. Yes, she's got a great reputation. So we can advocate for each other. And that's a great way to combat prejudice. And in this case, it wasn't about prejudice. It was more about, again, like opening doors for someone who might not have the visibility in an organization that they need to get ahead. And
or even know that the door existed in that particular
Absolutely, place, right? Kevin, absolutely. So I think we can be good advocates and mentors for people. And also really looking at the team, and instead of kind of going, okay, this person's next in line, right? It's really easy to plug and play and go, this person's next in line. But a good leader is going to sit back and go, what do we need now? And what do we need, let's say 36 months from now? Like, where's the business going? Where's our competition going? What would be the best skill set person that we could find, for this? And they might not be the next person in line.
Right.
Maybe Robert from accounting has been with the company for 18 years and he's a great guy and all that kind of stuff, but maybe he doesn't have what it takes to move us forward in changing times or something, and someone else is there. So I think it's about, as a leader, it's not about prejudice. It's about really like making sure that the opportunities are presented so that you get the best people in the best positions who can really move the business forward, not just the person who was due. That hierarchy is getting very dated.
Yeah, agreed.
So
So before we go, there's a couple of other questions I want to ask you. We're going to shift gears now.
okay.
And so I want to know, Kelly McDonald, author of How to Work With and Lead People Not Like You, like, what do you do for fun?
For fun, I play cello very, very, very badly, but I'm still plugging away at it and trying to get better. So I've been at it less than 3 years. And so it's a hard instrument to learn. It's taking me a long time. I also am a boxer, and I don't mean kickboxing. I mean actual, boxing. Boxing. Yep. And so I do that. And let's see. I'm also learning to play pickleball.
There you go. Pickleball, cello, and boxing. Like, there are not many people on the planet that got those three together. Nope. 2 of the 3 maybe, but all 3, I don't know about that. So Kelly, I asked you ahead of time this question, and you said, is it okay if I answer with 2? And I'm like, of course it is. What are you reading these days?
I'm reading 3 books. So one is called Outthink, Outperform, and it's by a friend and colleague named Roger Hurney, Hurni. It's a marketing book, and it's got really great tactics for how to take marketing to a better level. I'm reading another book by a colleague and friend of mine, and it's called Innovation is Everybody's Business by Tamara Gondour, and I will spell that. It's Ghandour. And what I like about that book is innovation is a hot word and, hot topic in business right now. And yet a lot of people are very intimidated by that word because they think that that's like the real brainiacs that are sitting in the ivory tower, like innovating, coming up with stuff. Yep. And it's not for me. Like, we have people that are doing that. I don't need to generate ideas or anything like that. And so what she does is really breaks down innovation to make it everybody's business and very accessible to people. And it's just a great book. It's a real easy read too. And then the third one I'm reading is I am rereading for probably the 10th time. I'm rereading my favorite book of all time, which is To Kill a Mockingbird.
All right. We will have all 3 of those in the show notes for you, as well as a link to Kelly's book as well. The question you probably wanted me to most ask all the way through, Kelly, is where can we learn more about you? Where do you want to point people?
Sure.
This is your chance.
Okay. So my website is McDonaldmarketing.com, and it's just, I'm a McDonald, not a Mac. So it's McDonald marketing.com. And on my LinkedIn is where I'm really posting and sharing a lot of stuff that can be useful, helpful information, tips and tricks. And that my LinkedIn handle is Kelly C, like cat, Kelly C McDonald. And so you can find me there. And my posts actually generate a lot of comments and stuff like that. So you might see a little cello in there too once in a while.
Kelly C. McDonald, McDonaldmarketing.com. And of course, you can go to her website, or you go to wherever you find books are sold, get a copy of the book. Hope you'll do that. Question before we finish, a question that I have for all of you. It's the question I ask all of you there we go. We'll just put this in there real quick. So the question I have for all of you that I ask every single episode is, now what? What will you do with what you just got? Because there was lots of great stuff here. And if all you do is listen and then move on to the next podcast, or listen and continue your run, or listen and finish making your dinner, I hope that we're doing more than helping you pass time and maybe even enjoy that, but rather that we're doing something and you're getting something that you can use to change your world, to change your results. And so that means you got to take action on something. And whether it's a 4-word phrase like "I need your help," or 5-word phrase "tell me more about it," or whatever it might be, whether you start to think about the D word beyond the big 5. I don't know what it is for you, but I know that if you will ask yourself that question and take action on what your answer is, you'll get far more from this than you would have otherwise. So Kelly, thanks for being here. It was such a
Thank you
pleasure
for
to have
having me,
you.
Kevin. You're wonderful. You're a wonderful host.
Well, thank you. And everybody, if you agree with Kelly that I'm a wonderful host, then you make sure you come back next week, because next week we'll be back with another episode. So here's the thing. Wherever you're watching or listening, make sure you like or subscribe and tell a friend, and come back next week for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everybody.